is Adora and you're welcome to Adora Zone. Today I'll be talking about the differences between living in London city as a whole and outside of London. And now I'm talking about mostly towns and cities that are not as big as London itself, which most Londoners refer to as the countryside. So it's just for the benefit of those that are thinking of maybe relocating from London to maybe outside of London. Before you move from London to outside of London, you have to put a lot of things into consideration. You have to put a lot of things, you have to really think about it. If possible, you have to move over to that place, travel there for a while, move around and see, compare and contrast what you like about the place and what you don't before you make that major move. Okay, now the first one is the cheap property prices. Definitely house prices, property prices outside of London is cheaper than whatever you can get in London, be it for rent or for buy. It's definitely cheaper. The farther you move from London, the cheaper it gets. So like in the north of London, you could get a 3-bedroom house. I'm talking about a whole house, a 3-bedroom house with a garden and the parking and everything for as low as 500, 600 pounds. Yeah, that's 700 at least. You could still get at that range. Meanwhile in London, you can never get a 3-bedroom property, a 3-bedroom house as low as that. So those are one of the reasons you should actually look at if you're moving out of London to any place that is not in London. Compare the property prices to see if it's something you like. And then number 2 is the traffic. Now, compared to London, we all know how crazy the traffic is in London because of the huge number of people living in the city. So compared to London, outside of London, in many other cities or many other towns outside of London, you don't have that huge traffic because you don't have that huge number of people living there. So the traffic is less compared to what you have in London. And then number 3 is the jobs. There are less jobs in most cities, or rather most towns outside of London. Now, I'm not talking about cities like Manchester or Birmingham or Liverpool. I'm not talking about those kind of places. I'm talking about places that even though they have the city status, they're as good as being called towns because they really don't have that which qualifies them to become cities. Honestly, there's a lot of difference between them and between living there and living in London. So when it comes to the job, as immigrants, you find out that the jobs are not really there, like compared to what you have in London, where you see people working in the banking sector. Now I'm talking about when you see people of color working in the banking sector, working in the train station, working as bus drivers, working as, very vast and various different kinds of jobs. But outside of London, especially in some towns, you don't have that opportunity for people of color to have such jobs. Now, the jobs that are very, very, very much in common in such places are care jobs. I'm talking about the healthcare sector. That's what you find in such places. So when you're moving, or if you're thinking of moving outside of London to such places, you should also bear that in mind. Now, the next one is the transport time. When I lived in London, I always enjoyed moving from place to place. Even if you don't drive in London, you are as good as being as comfortable as a driver, because the times between each as I say, each transport, or is it each bus times or whatever, is very short. Like every 5 minutes a bus comes to the bus stop. Every 5 minutes a bus comes to the bus stop. So it's like you're not really waiting for so long to get a bus to move from where you're going to and all that. And another thing I like about London, because the transport system is so fantastic, you could be in a particular bus stop waiting for a bus and you see 2 buses going to the same destination where you are standing. So it's very fantastic. It's very lovely that even with the buses, with the trains, you are good to go. You're very okay. The transport system in London is beautiful. Meanwhile, that outside of London, especially in little towns, is not as fantastic as what you have in London. Like here where I live, I most times when I'm going out and I need to take the bus out, I have to sweat it out. Sometimes it can be very stressful. It can be very frustrating because if once you miss the bus, you have to wait 20 minutes for the next one. So it's what I'm talking about. If you're in a hurry and you've missed your first bus and you can't wait for 20 minutes, the next option you have available is to take a taxi. Not everyone can afford to be using taxis all the time. So these are areas where you have to look at if you're moving from London to outside of London. And then the next one is the immigration. Like in London, I love London because you have different kinds of people. You have the Asians, you have the blacks, you have the Jewish, you have the whites, everybody from different, walks of life. They are there, different cultures, different languages. It's just a beautiful mix of different human beings. But over here and in some other places outside of London, it's not that you're not so lucky to see that kind of population. Like where I live, the number of blacks where I live, it's not much at all. So you kind of struggle to kind of, is it like make friends or to have friends or from your own ethnic background, that actually understand what you're talking about, where you're coming from. So just because we don't have more migration system over here compared to London, compared to what you have there, it's another thing you should look into. If you're the kind of person that likes to make friends with a particular tribe or a particular race, look into it, because over here in some other towns, you don't really have what you have in London there. The next thing is no social life. Now, back to what I'm saying about the immigration system. The no social life thing all boils down to the immigration. Because you have very few, or you have less percentage of immigrants in most of these towns outside of London, the social life is not really there. Because if you're the kind of person that likes to go partying with your with people or from your own ethnic group or from your own race or from your own tribe or whatever, because they're not really like that, they're not so populated over here, you'll find it difficult to have fun the way you want it, or the way you're used to, or the way you've always done it with your kind of people. So the social life here kind of deepens, because you are not, will I say, you are not in the same circle with what you would have wanted, or what you have in your head, the kind of picture you want, or you have in your head as fun. You can't get it here, because the social life over here is not as much as what you compare to what you have in London. And then the next one is the few or no African shops. Now, this is one aspect that kind of bothers me, to be very honest. Me as a person, it worries me. I'm not really very happy about that, because like over here where I live in Stoke-on-Trent, over here where I live, and then even some other places, you will not see African shops, or you hardly see African shops. When I mean African shops, I'm talking about shops or stores run by Africans, where they sell African foodstuffs, African provisions, African hair stuff and all that. So most of the time, if I need anything African product or whatever, I have to travel as far as Manchester, which is 1 hour away from here. So I have to travel as far as Manchester to get these items, and then travel back 1 hour again to get back home. Meanwhile, in London, it's just a stone throw from your house. You could just get 1 or 2 African stuffs, over where you live. Sometimes you could just walk around the streets, and then before you know it, you have variety of shops. So it's your choice to now walk into anyone you want and pick whatever item you want, which is a very big contrast from here. So if you're looking at moving out from London, there's so many things you need to put into consideration. If you like the kind of life you live in London, and you think, oh no, I want a change of life, or I want a change of pattern, I just want something different from what I'm used to in London, I would advise you to go over there, look at it, look at the place, look at the way of life, look at the people, look at everything, look at the structure, compare the job systems over there and over in London before you come to a conclusion. So that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching, and then please subscribe to my channel for more informative stories. Thank you.